So Into the Soul is not a traditional movie where you have a beginning, middle, and end and everything just happens in real time or whatever. Into the Soul jumps around. We start to pick up with Aiden's character in the moment when he's in the snow and hurt, but then he starts going back into a dream sequence because he's got temporary amnesia and he's trying to figure out what happened and why he's in this predicament with 2 broken legs in the middle of nowhere. And he starts remembering things in reverse, but he starts remembering them, the last thing that happened. How did he get down the mountain? And then he remembers, okay, now what happened before that and what happened before that. So the film kind of takes us backwards and we cut back to real time. So Into the Soul was born in November, December of 2018. And shortly after one of my older brothers had passed away. Very self-reflective moments in November, December of that year. This movie was born out of that time. And I took a vacation to San Diego, after all of the stress of that. And during that time while I was in San Diego, Aiden, who was doing a lot of commercial work for me, he posted a photo of himself in a short film he was doing, and he grew a beard out for it. And he just looked like he was born to play this type of character, this rough, Western historical figure type of character. And I just sent him a message right then and there. I said, hey, hold on to that beard. I'm gonna write a role for you.
And that was pretty much the beginning of how the whole thing started, was him just saying, I like your beard and I want you to keep growing it.
Late December, early January, the ideas kept progressing and I kept going back and forth with Aiden about the story idea. It just so happened at that time, early January of 2019, I had a music video to shoot with my director of photography, Kalen Albert. And Kalen was in Iceland and he couldn't shoot it. So he said, here, get in touch with one of my friends. And he gave me Dane's contact info, and I contacted Dane, and Dane came on to shoot this music video for me. After we shot that video that Aiden happened to be in, I just went up to Dane and said, hey, are you interested by chance in shooting a feature film?
I got involved with Into the Soul through some work that I had been doing with Scott, the director, and he pitched me on, hey, I'm making this feature film. Will you be my director of photography?
And kind of like on the spot, he said, okay, I'm in. And he gave me a few things that he wanted to happen before we shot it, and we resolved all those. And so we had a director of photography aboard in Dane that was just kind of coincidentally came together with me and Aiden in early January out of the blue. And then we had 3 people, and we said, well, okay, we can make a film now. So then I contacted McKenna, because I knew McKenna was perfect for the role that I had in my mind for her, but also she had connections to horses, and she's a horseback rider, and it was going to be a small budget film, and I needed all the help I could get with the people that I hired. So they had to bring something to the role.
So I got involved. I remember I was actually driving to Salt Lake to go see a friend, and Scott Lamson called me, and I worked with Scott on multiple projects, so to get a call from Scott wasn't abnormal. You know, hey, I have a music video I'm shooting, something like that. But he just started proposing this really unlike Scott idea that I'd ever heard. And I train horses as my full-time job, and so horses are kind of something that I'm very used to, I do all the time, but acting is what I love to do. And so to combine the two was so fun. I was like, yeah, Scott, like whatever you need, just let me know. I mean, that sounds great. So
that's kind of how it was born. Then the 4 of us kind of branched out from there, and we hired each individual character, and we wanted to get it shot that winter of, you know, January and February of 2019, because we were going to lose snow. When I first decided that I was going to make this film, I knew that I was going to have to self-finance it. I had to set a budget that I was okay with losing, because you never know if you're going to get your money back. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can put $5K. This is going to be my limit, and everything's going to have to fit under there. Now, to make that happen took incredible sacrifice as far as me to make this film on 5K. I've always been a big believer in just doing something. Whether it's successful or not, do something and do it. Don't, because you're not going to get any younger. And so if you got things that you want to do, and one of the things I wanted to do was make a feature film, and this was the right moment.
The director, Scott Lamson, is a dogged, thrifty type of filmmaker. He's going for a specific look or effect, and he can figure out a way to do it without paying an astronomical price or bringing a truck of equipment with a whole crew. It's actually quite impressive because it requires you to, you can tell you have to think differently. He thinks differently than other filmmakers I've worked with in the past.
I've worked with Scott on quite a few projects. I've worked with Scott since, I think, 2017. And if there's one thing that I've learned about Scott, Scott can make everything out of nothing. Yeah, I mean, Scott's a miracle worker.
He's really good at pulling like the emotion that he needs out of you. And so if he was like, oh, like be sad in this part, and like you don't quite get it or nothing happens, then he finds a new way to approach it and gets that out of you. Like, no, like a softer look. Okay, now tilt your head like a little bit more, or like, not like weeping, but like melancholy. Like he has the words and the ability to really pull a performance out of somebody, which is really cool. Especially with a movie that's so much about what we're doing and not so much about what we're saying.
The whole film's about Aiden's character. And Aiden was gonna have to be there every day for 17 days and just help me with the film. And so Aiden came on as a producer, which really helped because Aiden was so positive about the whole film. You know, he's never late, always stayed late. His involvement goes far beyond what you see in the film with him acting. He was production, casting, crew, something heavy to be lifted, he lifts it, inspiring the other actors, and then just ridiculous conditions that we put him through. Like we had gloves and boots and parkas and ski hats, and we just put him out there in a deer skin and no gloves and some leather boots that were crappy and that were gonna get wet the second he put his feet in the snow. So he would spend those 8-hour days with no protection, you know, no protective gear in those elements. I mean, he did have the deer skin, but he would crawl through the powder and just be in pain, like tears rolling down his eyes almost. And he's the toughest guy I know.
Half of the movie, I would say, or close to, I felt that way at least. I was crawling through the snow, and it was the coldest my hands have probably ever been. My body itself has been colder, but my hands, I've never felt that cold.
What he endured with that character is truly amazing. And day after day after day. I envision this film with a ton of drone shots. There's a lot of cool aerials going through the trees. And so I really convinced Dane, who's a drone fanatic, that this is gonna be a drone film.
I actually was looking for a feature film to get to work on as a director of photography, but using my drone as the principal camera. And that's because the type of drone that I have is a really high quality camera. It's 6K resolution, shoots in raw video. And I wanted an opportunity to kind of push the boundary of what a camera, or a drone rather, can do. It's not just this flying aerial camera, but it's great for handheld, for steady shots because of the gimbal stabilizer on it. And this was actually the perfect opportunity to use it into the Soul. And I thought to myself, well, Scott, let's film it on a drone. I'll be your director of photography if I can film it on my drone.
And so we invested in something he could actually handhold the drone and shoot handheld with the drone, which the lenses on the drone are magnificent. So it gave it a really cool cinematic look.
We used the DJI Inspire 2 with X7 camera. That's a 6K resolution camera that shoots in ProRes RAW, which is a raw video codec. and offers a lot of dynamic range and a ton of flexibility in color grading. It's a fantastic codec. And along with that X7 camera, I had 4 different lenses. So we had a lot of flexibility to be able to get the right shot, the right look, the depth of field that we were wanting. So just a full-fledged camera, it just happens to fly.
That's what brought Dane on, was that I talked him into doing that. Now, the downside of that was that nobody shoots films on a drone. And so it was a learning process, the whole shoot, because drones have a motor and you can't get clean audio with the drone motor humming all the time. So Dane's a very technical, analytical type of guy, and he likes figuring out problems.
We're definitely not the first people to do this, but it's not necessarily common, in fact, very uncommon to film something with your drone first as the principal camera. And so we ran into a lot of bottlenecks, technical issues, just weird bugs, really. Just things that shouldn't exist, but because we were using it in a very unique way and really pushing its limit, we quickly became aware of kind of where the developers took some shortcuts.
And it was challenging him to get better. And he did, he got better as it went on, and we got better shots. But yeah, that was a really unique experience with this film, is that we attempted to do it with a drone.
So the drone actually worked out really well for shooting this type of film because we could be rugged, we could be flexible and nimble, and at the same time, we're not compromising on quality. In fact, it is high-grade cinema quality footage that comes out of that drone, and we're able to get any type of shot virtually that we can imagine.
So how I wrote the characters for this film, which I was very fortunate to do, is I knew who was playing the parts before I would really develop their character. So I didn't write the script and write these characters and say, okay, now I got to go cast the perfect person for this. I actually casted who I wanted for these roles, and then I wrote the lines in the script for those people. And I knew everybody really well. People watch this film who have seen it or seen the early versions said they really nailed those characters. And part of that is we had the luxury of creating the roles based on the actual person. And that's rare to be able to do that for so many of the actors. You know, the one character that we rushed into, we got so lucky, was Michael. Michael played the Native American, and we didn't have a Native American, and there's just not a lot of Native American actors in Utah or in general that, you know, you can just say, oh, there's a whole selection of casting opportunities. So we put a call out for a Native American, and we only got back 2 or 3, and 2 of them weren't gonna work. They just weren't gonna work. Too old and just not gonna fit the character. And one of them was Michael.
I responded to a casting call for a Native American warrior type and met with Scott and Aiden, and they kind of talked to me about what the film's gonna be about and like kind of gave me a quick rundown about the project. And then they were like, well, and it's low budget, so is this something you'd be interested in? And I was like, yes.
We hired Michael the day before we were gonna shoot his scenes. And that was the one part of the film where we just flat out lucked out. And then I sent him home from the interview where we hired him on the spot. I said, just give me some looks. Give me some looks and we'll just pick a look. And he, to his credit and to his wife's credit, who helped him with makeup and wardrobe, he gave us 3 or 4 different Indian looks. And we just settled on the one that obviously we have in the film. And he showed up the next day. He's got naturally curly hair. He straightened his hair. Perfect makeup. He put this costume together in one day. It's one of the most, it's the miracle of the film that he pulled that off the way he did. So we got really lucky for the production of Into the Soul actually shooting the film, because we started in, I believe, like February, early February. So the day of the shoot came, and it was the biggest snowstorm of at least 5 years up to that point. I think we got, you know, several feet in the mountains, and I mean, it was ridiculous. And we shot for 17 days. I think we shot 5 or 6 of those days in the snowy mountains. And every day there was some sort of new challenge, a new problem. Just because we're shooting on a small budget and we're shooting up in waist-high, chest-deep snow, and it's hard to get to the spots we needed to be secluded. It was cold, and anyway, it was the most ambitious, challenging thing I could have ever taken upon myself to do. Looking back on it, I don't know. We jumped right into it, and we just said we're going to do this. And in the end, it was a big blessing because we got blessed with this incredible winter with incredible snowfall, which made the film look great. But it was certainly really difficult shooting in that kind of environment.
What I enjoyed most about this whole production is actually getting out and being in all these different locations that we usually don't get to shoot in, especially during the wintertime. It's so hard to shoot something during the wintertime, and having this whole thing like shot on a drone is even like that more amazing, I guess you could say. Shooting in all these different locations during the wintertime, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, that's what makes making a movie so fun.
The one day that stands out to me the most was the most challenging day of the whole film. And that was because I needed the most actors there at once. It was the day we shot up at McKenna's property. And we were very fortunate because McKenna has property up in Walsburg, and we could shoot in and around her house. And it was, 0 degrees in February. And, but I had to get 5 or 6 different actors there to that location 2 hours away. I had to have 3 or 4 horses there that McKenna had to just somehow, manage. Had to get my crew there, which I had more crew that day, 3 or 4 crew that I didn't normally have. And that was the day where it really felt like a real set. And it was the most expensive day because, I just had to pay for more things that day. So it was not only going to be the most expensive day, it was going to be the most difficult day. And we had a ton of things to shoot because we had so many characters there. And the biggest problem with the whole, whenever you're doing something on a low budget, you don't have a lot of time, especially in the winter time, you don't have a lot of light. And so no matter how early you start or how hard you work, you just don't have enough light because you only have until 4:30 p.m. and you lose your light. And so you're just constantly chasing the light to get these shots in. And that was the day that we had to get the perfect snow aerial shot. And we had a lot of dialogue to do. And we had to shoot out of sequence because we had to shoot scenes earlier in the film, and we had to shoot scenes that happen later in the film. So we had to remember that Aiden needs blood on his face for this shot. He needs to be clean for this shot. It was McKenna's first day that she was going to show up and do some dream sequence stuff. That day was unbelievable. And up until that moment, we shot maybe for 5 days before that scene. And I was like, okay, this is working, but I don't know if this film's gonna work until I finish that day. If I'm not able to get that day to work, because I'm not gonna be able to do it again. I can't get all those people up there again. I'm not gonna be able to get those horses again. I'm not gonna be able to get the right snow again. Everything was just had to work. So after that day, when we finally finished, and McKenna's mom fed us all spaghetti dinner, it was amazing, and we were sitting by the fire, and we had to shoot into the night up there too, because we had to shoot Aiden's fire scenes. I mean, this was an incredibly long day, probably an 18-hour day. And when that day was finished and it worked and we got the footage, it was such a relief because it was like, now it's gonna work. Now I've got the shots that, I've got what I need to make a film out of this. We can finish this now. It's downhill from here.
I think what I really enjoyed about filming for Into the Soul is just kind of the thrifty creativity that we had as a team. And then the drone kind of enabled that. We could get shots that would cost tens and thousands of dollars with massive crews, trucks, semi-trucks, and it would take days of planning. And we would just set a date, go hike in the mountains. Scott had the story in his head, and it's like, this is what I want, and we could do it. The camera was could do any shot we wanted, a follow, a dolly, a tracking, a close-up, a rack focus, high up in the air, aerial, top down. It could literally do anything. It was quite phenomenal. And the actors were also on board. They knew how to work with Scott. They knew how to work with each other. And I think that's how this film was made on a budget of $5,000.
So when the film was completed, I knew it had to have the right music score. I reached out to 2 or 3 different composers, but I was always kind of like leaning towards Alana because I knew that, like the whole film, such a collaborative experience. I mean, you have to know who you're working with. I hired Alana knowing that she would work with me and that she could send me something and then I could say, that's great, or let's go this direction with it. And she was great that way. So I'm kind of a throwback. I like movies from those big score movies with, a theme. And so I wanted the theme of Into the Soul to kind of play throughout the whole movie and people to become familiar with it and kind of attaches you to those characters. And she would send me these great, more complex pieces, and I would always just rein her in. I wanted something simple that just fit the mood of the film, and in the end, she delivered that to her credit. So I'm very proud of the score and how Alana and our relationship produced that score. So my hope when audiences watch this film is that they can relate to the characters. Even though it's a period piece and it's set in the 19th century, the themes in the movie are very common with the same themes we deal with today, which is mainly relationships. And I hope people see themselves a little bit in the film and can relate to it, whether it's loss or whether it's love or whether it's abandonment or whatever it is that somebody has been through. I hope that they see that in the characters and in the story and they can relate to it and root for those characters.
So I am really excited for audiences to see this. I feel like Into the Soul is it's relatable in that there's struggle and there's heartache and there's heartbreak and there's love and there's just all of these like real human emotions that I think we've all gone through at some point and to varying degrees and levels. But I think audiences, no matter what their age, are gonna find it really relatable. I think it's gonna be really impactful and I'm really excited to see what people think.
What audiences should take from this movie, it's not completely unlike others in that there's a love story, there's some twists and turns in it. But I would think what audiences will probably most take from this is that even back then you have the same things that exist today, which is love and courage, and that when you find a reason to live and to survive, even against some crazy odds that would definitely cause one person to think, hey, it's no use, I'm giving up, that it's always worth it in the end to push yourself.
I'm a big believer in whenever you create something, no matter what it is, whoever is the recipient of that, whether it's, in this case, it's an audience watching a movie, you want to make them feel something. So whether they feel happy or whether they feel sad or whether they feel scared or whether they feel uneasy, the goal is to make them feel something. Hopefully you can make them feel all those things at some point in the movie. That's when you know you've made a good movie. At the end of the day, I just hope that people walk away with a feeling, an emotion that the film resonated with them. You got to have people that believe in the film to get it done. You really have to just cast and hire people who believe in you, that you'll be able to get it done. And luckily, that was the case with us.